What's up, guys? Sorry about that. And welcome to the show. Hopefully everybody's well today. So I figured I'd make this matchup to talk about David Arquette's death matchup that happened the other day. Now I figured I'd jump back a little bit and talk about David Arquette's involvement or history in professional wrestling world, just in case anybody doesn't know. David Arquette is obviously mostly known for his acting ability in the Scream movies. I think you guys been in like 50-something movies. So there's more, sorry about that, more known as a movie actor, but his involvement within professional wrestling goes back about 20 years, or over actually 20 years or so. He's been involved in professional wrestling either via backstage or as a professional wrestler. Yeah, of course, everybody remembers him from winning the WCW World Heavyweight title back in the year of 2000. Who can't forget that? But he's also did a little bit of backstage stuff for the WWE several years ago. He was also involved in in-ring action for quite a long time, actually. He's been involved in professional wrestling. He's fought in the indies. He's actually not bad of a professional wrestler, not that great. I've never seen him win a match, but I'm sure it's actually happened. He recently took some time off from the professional wrestling ring, but did his comeback matchup about 5-6 months ago against a guy named RJ City. He ended up, of course, losing that matchup, but all in all, it was an okay, decent matchup. Now, now David Arquette ended up taking on a gentleman by the name of Nick Cage, who's known as being like a rather hardcore wrestler. The matchup that they ended up being involved in was, of course, a death match. For those of you who don't know what a death match is, I definitely suggest you go and look it up and check it out, because they're very gruesome, very bloody, very hardcore, very real matchups. They're just very, very tough matchups. Definitely leave everybody involved pretty much battered, bloodied, and beaten. This matchup between Nick Cage and, of course, not the actor Nick Cage, but the professional wrestler Nick Cage, and David Arquette was a bloody, bloody mess. Matchup started as which was a decent back and forth. The matchup ended up becoming pretty much a brutal beatdown. David Arquette was hit with everything from light bulbs, chairs, pizza cutters, you name it. He was hit with it. David Arquette, of course, did fight back quite decently, and actually really impressed me during the matchup. I definitely have a newfound respect for the guy, for sure, after watching this matchup. It was definitely really brutal. I believe David Arquette has suffered a neck injury, as of course, if anybody sees any of the photos or watches the videos from this matchup, this was pretty much the most bloody matchup I've ever seen in like years and years and years and years. Anyway, after the matchup happened, of course, David Arquette was sent to emergency room where he was stitched up and treated for his injuries, and then he was released a few hours later and sent home. Now he's just all cut up and scratched up and stuff, but he's walking around and he's perfectly fine. Now, during the parts of the matchup, you can tell that like David Arquette definitely no-sold the end of the matchup. A lot of the matchup, I think pretty much the matchup at a certain point turned into a shoot fight. For those of you who don't know what a shoot fight is, it's basically when a scripted wrestling match turns real and the wrestlers actually really go at it. I think that's what happened at a certain point during this matchup. You can tell that David Arquette just basically wanted to no-sell, and vice versa. Like I think it turned out to be a rather shoot fight at some point, but it was really good. I mean, they definitely did really well. I think a lot of people are going to be talking about this matchup for a long time. If you haven't seen it, I'm sure you could probably find it somewhere. It was really great. At one point, David Arquette even did the diamond cutter to Nick Cage and a bunch of chairs. It was really awesome, really something to see. If you definitely don't respect David Flair as a wrestler, I definitely would check this match out, because I think it would sell you on his ability and definitely sell you on the guy for sure, like it did for me. But like I said, I think at some point it turned into like a shoot fight and like a real kind of back and forth. It seemed like David Arquette just didn't want to give up. seemed like he just didn't want to lose and you know, get pinned and go down and that whole thing. So he kind of you know, started no selling, and I think it turned into a real shoot fight at a certain point. But like I said, all in all, with, you know, it being a, you know, shoot fight and no selling and this whole thing and back and forth and, you know, kind of yelling at each other, that whole thing, it turned out to be a really insanely good matchup and definitely way better than I had ever expected. But anyway, that's just my talk about that. But I'm hoping that David Arquette continues his in-ring, you know, his in-ring wrestling, because I think he could actually do something rather big with it, especially after this matchup. I think he could hop on that success. Of course, I would like to see him in Lucha Underground. I think that would be a really good place for him, because especially after this this matchup, because Lucha Underground, of course, does a more hardcore thing, and I think that's definitely where it lies. But according to David Arquette, he released a statement saying that death matches are definitely not his thing, and they're definitely not for him. So I guess I'd kind of use the fact that he doesn't want to do the hardcore thing anymore, and I think he's just, if he does return back to the ring after this matchup, it's just going to be in regular singles competition. I don't think it'll be in the hardcore world. I think it'll just be in the one-on-one, you know, regular matchups instead. But who knows? I mean, I'm sure if he was given a contract that involved him being a hardcore wrestler, I'm sure he would take it. He seems to have a love for the sport. His training regimen, according to David Arquette, was pretty big for this matchup. He trained quite hard, harder than he's ever trained before, which you got to respect, especially for somebody who's 47 years old, to make a return to the ring. I'm sure that's been done before, but in that aspect, I'm sure it hasn't been done before. So definitely big props go out to David Arquette for sure. I mean, a lot of people said during the matchup that they thought he was going to die, that he could have been killed, which I'm sure definitely is the case. I'm sure he could have been killed for sure several times. If you watch the matchup, it was definitely pretty brutal, but he wasn't, and he's perfectly fine now. So like I said, I definitely hope that he continues on in the wrestling world, and hopefully we see him in more of the Lucha Libre type thing. It would be nice to see him in AAA or something where it's a little bit more hardcore. But anyway, that's just my rant on the David Arquette matchup. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. You know, love you very much, and I will check you in the next video.